Iran didn't see it coming. Not like this, not at this scale. In the span of just a few weeks, Israel has turned Iran's most prized military assets into smoldering craters, and the United States has been right there alongside them, feeding the fire. But here's what the headlines aren't telling you. Iran is hitting back, hard, and the war that was supposed to be over quickly is now threatening to drag the entire Middle East, and possibly the world, into something far darker than anyone anticipated. To understand what Israel is doing right now, you need to understand why it moved when it did. For years, Iran has been inching closer and closer to nuclear weapons capability. Operation Midnight Hammer in 2025 was supposed to be the answer, a targeted, devastating strike on Iran's nuclear facilities that would set the program back by years. It didn't finish the job. Iran kept enriching, Iran kept building, and Iran kept funding Hezbollah, Hamas, and every other proxy force it could find to threaten Israel's existence. So Israel made a decision, not a small one, a historic one. On February 28, 2026, Israel and the United States launched a coordinated surprise attack on Iran that sent shockwaves across the entire planet. The operation had two names. The Americans called it Operation Epic Fury. The Israelis called it Operation Roaring Lion. Together, they launched nearly 900 strikes in the first 12 hours alone. And the very first target on that list was the man at the top, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. He didn't survive the night. That was the opening move, and since then, Israel.
Here's where the numbers start to get staggering. Since the war began, the United States has struck over 7,000 targets inside Iran. When you add Israeli strikes on top of that, U.S. Secretary Pete Hegseth says that number climbs to approximately 15,000 targets hit in total. 15,000. That's not a military campaign. That's the systematic dismantling of an entire country's war machine. But let's talk specifically about what Israel has been doing, because its role in this war is unlike anything we've seen from the Israeli military before. Israel has focused its firepower primarily on northern Iran, using its fleet of advanced U.S.-made fighter jets to conduct precision strikes deep inside Iranian territory. The targets have been carefully chosen: ballistic missile storage facilities, IRGC command centers, weapons depots, leadership compounds. Iran's state broadcaster in Tehran was hit by Israeli jets in a separate air operation on March 3rd, knocking out the regime's ability to control its own propaganda narrative at home. Then came the move that changed everything. Israel struck the South Pars gas field. For those who don't know, South Pars is one of the largest natural gas fields on the planet. It's Iran's economic lifeline. Striking it wasn't just a military decision, it was a message. Iran, you cannot sustain this war. And the consequences rippled immediately. Qatar's main energy hub at Ras Laffan suffered what officials described as extensive damage because the two fields are connected. Global energy markets went haywire, oil prices surged, and even Donald Trump, Israel's closest ally in this fight, got on the phone with Netanyahu personally to complain. Trump claimed the United States knew nothing about the South Pars strike in advance. Netanyahu said Israel acted alone. But a person briefed on the matter told reporters that the U.S. and Israel coordinate on all targets. Whether that coordination broke down or whether someone is not telling the whole truth, well, that's a question that's still hanging in the air. And Israel didn't stop there. Israeli warplanes conducted precision strikes on residential compounds in small towns in Iran's northern Gilan and Mazandaran provinces. These weren't random. These appear to have been targeted assassination attempts on senior Iranian officials hiding in civilian areas. The IDF also confirmed the killing of the top spokesperson for Iran's Revolutionary Guard, Ali Mohammed Naimi. One by one, Iran's leadership structure is being picked apart.
Before we go any further, we have to talk about the human cost of what's happening. Because behind every target number and every military objective, there are real people. As of today, March 23, 2026, at least 1,444 people have been killed inside Iran. Among those, a minimum of 204 are children. 18 hospitals and health facilities have been struck. The WHO has raised alarm bells about the collapse of Iran's medical infrastructure in several provinces. The single deadliest incident so far came when a U.S. Tomahawk missile struck a school in the city of Minab. 168 people were killed. Over 110 of them were children. A U.S. military investigation later concluded that the strike resulted from outdated targeting data. That investigation has done nothing to quiet international outrage. On the Israeli side, 18 people have been killed. On the U.S. side, 13 soldiers have died. In Gulf states caught in the crossfire, 21 lives have been lost. This is what war looks like when superpowers collide with a regional power that refuses to surrender. Now here's where a lot of coverage gets it wrong. The narrative being pushed in some corners is that Iran is helpless, that it's been crushed and has nothing left to fight with. That is not what's happening on the ground. Yes, the U.S. claims Iran's missile capability is down 90% from where it was on day one of Operation Epic Fury. Yes, it claims Iran's drone capability is down 95%. Those are massive reductions, but 10% of Iran's original missile force is still a serious threat, and Iran is using every last bit of it. On March 23rd, today, Iranian missiles were seen streaking across the sky over central Israel. Cluster munitions from those missiles impacted multiple locations in Petah Tikva, a major city in central Israel's heartland. Iran's military didn't fire those missiles at an empty desert, it fired them at Israeli civilians. Iran has also been launching wave after wave of missile and drone attacks at U.S. military bases across the region. 13 American soldiers are dead as a result of those strikes. Gulf states that opened their airspace or offered logistical support to U.S. and Israeli forces have also paid a price, with Iranian retaliatory strikes causing damage and deaths across the region. And then there's the Strait of Hormuz. This is Iran's ultimate weapon. Not a missile, not a drone, but a choke point. 20% of the world's seaborne oil passes through this narrow stretch of water. Iran has imposed a de facto blockade on it. Merchant ships attempting the passage have been targeted. The global shipping industry is in chaos. Energy prices are through the roof. And Iran knows that as long as it controls that strait, it has leverage that no airstrike can immediately neutralize. On March 23rd, Iran's military made its most dramatic threat yet, declaring it is ready to close the Strait of Hormuz indefinitely and attack energy infrastructure across the entire region if the United States follows through on its threat to bomb Iranian power plants. That threat came directly from Donald Trump. Let's talk about the United States, because Washington's role in this war is more complicated than it might appear. From day one, the U.S. has been the dominant military force in this conflict. American B-2 stealth bombers, B-1 Lancers, B-52 Stratofortresses, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and HIMARS rocket systems have been pounding Iran relentlessly. More than 6,500 U.S. combat missions have been flown over Iranian territory. The sheer scale of American firepower deployed here is unlike anything seen in the post-9/11 era. But Trump's messaging has been confusing, contradictory, and at times downright baffling. On one hand, he said the U.S. is winding down operations and is close to meeting its objectives. On the other hand, he's simultaneously dispatching 2,500 more Marines to the region and issuing the most aggressive ultimatum of the entire conflict. On March 23rd, Trump posted on Truth Social, threatening to obliterate Iran's power plants if Tehran doesn't fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. Iran's response was immediate. Attack our power plants and we will hit energy sites across the entire Middle East. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, every oil terminal, every pipeline, every LNG hub on the table. The world is now watching a 48-hour clock tick down. Nobody knows what happens when it reaches zero. What we do know is that the U.S. is preparing for more. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, 2,200 Marines, is en route from the Indo-Pacific and is expected to arrive toward the end of March. Military analysts believe these Marines are being positioned to launch raids along Iran's coastline in the Strait of Hormuz region, potentially seizing Iranian ports and establishing de facto U.S. naval bases along the strait's shore, stripping Iran of its ability to close the waterway. Meanwhile, Congress is getting nervous. Trump has requested another $200 billion to fund the campaign. Lawmakers are quietly searching for an exit strategy, and the IDF's own chief of staff said on March 23rd that Israel is only halfway through its campaign against Iran. Halfway. that means weeks more of this at minimum. While all of this is happening, Israel is not just fighting Iran, it's fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously, and that's a fact that gets lost in the wall-to-wall coverage of the Iran campaign. In Lebanon, Israel has been systematically targeting Hezbollah infrastructure with a ferocity that rivals what it's doing in Iran. Just today, Israeli forces struck a critical bridge over the Litani River in southern Lebanon, a key transit route connecting the south of the country to the north. Lebanese officials have condemned the strikes as unjustified and warned they represent the opening moves of a ground invasion. Over the weekend, the IDF launched what it described as wide-scale simultaneous waves of strikes on both Iran and Lebanon, hitting more than 200 targets across the two theaters. In Iran, dozens of compounds storing weapons and ballistic missiles were destroyed. In Lebanon, Beirut and surrounding areas were struck twice, with Israeli jets targeting Hezbollah command centers that have been coordinating rocket fire into northern Israel. Netanyahu himself visited the bombed Israeli city of Arad and made a direct personal vow to hunt down every senior IRGC commander still breathing. He called Iran's leadership a terrorist, fanatic regime and called on other nations to join the fight. And Netanyahu has made a remarkable claim that is drawing serious scrutiny. He says Iran now has no ability to enrich uranium and no ability to produce ballistic missiles. Those are enormous statements. But the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency told reporters that he believes parts of Iran's nuclear program will survive the campaign. The material will still be there, he said, and the enrichment capacities will be there. In other words, Israel may not have finished the job it set out to do, and it knows it. Which brings us to the question that is haunting every military planner in Washington and Tel Aviv right now. What about Iran's enriched uranium? Before Operation Midnight Hammer in 2025, Iran had an estimated 440.9 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60% purity. That's the level you need to get close to weapons-grade material. Strikes have damaged the facilities, but the uranium itself, where is it? Is it still buried under the rubble of Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan? Has it been moved? Hidden? Iran's foreign minister offered to dilute the enriched uranium as a negotiating concession, but dilution can be reversed. Enrichment can restart. And Trump has been unambiguous. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, full stop. So now there are serious discussions happening at the highest levels about a mission that would be unlike anything in military history. Delta Force, America's most elite special operations unit, may be being prepared to go into Iran and physically seize that enriched uranium from its storage sites. Former NATO commander Admiral James Stavridis has called what such a mission would require potentially the largest special forces operation in history. And when you break down what it would actually take, you understand why. Delta Force would have to locate uranium that may have been moved or buried deeper since the strikes. They would have to secure the site against Iranian resistance in an active war zone. Engineers would have to dig through rubble to reach underground bunkers. Experts would have to sweep for booby traps and mines. The U.S. would have to seize or build an airstrip nearby, possibly Badr Air Base just 6 miles from Isfahan, to fly the materials out. And a battle group of potentially 1,000 troops would be needed to hold a perimeter around each site, with constant air cover, fighter jets on rotation, and aerial refueling tankers keeping everything aloft. And that's for one site. Iran has multiple nuclear facilities. I'm worried about the drone strikes, IED and similar traps, contamination risks, and the long time we'd need to have people on site, said Richard Nephew, former Iran director at the National Security Council. He's right to be worried. But here's the bottom line. The U.S. has elite teams specifically trained to handle and remove radioactive material from conflict zones. The groundwork is being laid. Iranian missile capability is down 90%. Iranian drone capability is down 95%. The 31st MEU is inbound. Bunker-busting bombs are already hitting coastal sites near the Strait of Hormuz. Every move the U.S. and Israel are making right now looks like preparation. Preparation for something bigger, something final. Here's where we are as of today, March 23, 2026. Trump's 48-hour ultimatum is live. Iran is threatening to shut down the Strait of Hormuz forever and ignite energy infrastructure across the Middle East if its power plants are bombed. Israel says it's only halfway done. 2,200 Marines are steaming toward the region, and Delta Force may be preparing for the most consequential special operations mission in the history of warfare. Iran still has missiles, it still has drones, it still has the Strait of Hormuz, and it still has enriched uranium somewhere underground. It is not finished. It is wounded, but it is not finished. The question that nobody in Washington, Tel Aviv, or Tehran can answer right now is simple. How does this end? Netanyahu says it ends when Iran's regime can no longer threaten Israel's existence. Trump says it ends when Iran's nuclear program is gone forever. Iran says it ends when the bombs stop falling and its sovereignty is restored. Three very different definitions of victory, three very different visions of what comes next, and right now, none of them are close to being reconciled. The next 72 hours will tell us a great deal about which direction this war is heading. Watch the Strait of Hormuz. Watch the power plant ultimatum. Watch for any sign that U.S. boots are hitting Iranian soil, because if that happens, this war just entered a completely new chapter, and the world will never be the same.